first about, because I know you have a lot of knowledge on the flat Earth question, which I'm very interested in, and then after that we can kind of talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'd love to talk more about Israel Palestine. I think that would be my preference for second topic, and then whatever else you want to talk about after that. So okay, so I had, as you know, I had Matt Long on last week, and he did and Matt, right?
Yeah, I've met Matt a couple times. He's a great guy.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that conversation. And just for the audience, if you missed that interview, it is on the Rumble channel and on my X, a little harder to find there. And that was just, I mean, the audience who tuned in last week was just spellbound. Oh, let me end the Instagram live video. I forgot to end that.
That's awesome too, because he really comes from more of like the biblical perspective with that topic, and I don't. I kind of come through it from like the government corruption and the scientific kind of angle. And it's great that you talked to him, and now we're going to kind of touch on the other side of things, which is great.
Yeah, no, I'm really, really interested in this. So tell me how you figured this out, from your perspective, and kind of, I don't know, just give us the landscape on how you got involved with realizing that the Earth was flat from your perspective.
Right. So I think most people in this arena have the same story. We were kind of like in the rabbit hole with other topics, and when this one comes up, we kind of like, okay, that's ridiculous. Like, I get the government's lying, but this is clearly to make us look bad or what have you, all the typical knee-jerk responses. And I always say that nobody goes out trying to prove flat Earth. Basically, a door was presented to us, and we opened it and started to investigate the globe. And it was at that point I had a friend who I really trusted their judgment. They post things. I know that they do good research, and they kept posting about this. And I kept saying, this is really irking me. Like, why is she posting about flat Earth? Like, she's not stupid. You know what I mean? So I finally was like, you know what? I'm just going to watch this video. It was Eric Dubay, 200 Proofs Earth is Not a Spinning Ball. And I remember watching it and just being like floored, because if any of that was verifiable, which a lot of it is, then there was a very big problem with the math that they're telling us, the story of space and NASA and all these different things. And I eventually just, inevitably became a flat earther in my, debunking of the globe. And over time, a lot of people will still say that, is this, worth the credibility? Is this the right hill to die on? But I always remind people that, our motto as truth seekers is to question everything, even those things deemed unquestionable. And we're not, if this is a lie, this is potentially the biggest lie. And it would be silly for us as truthers to ignore the biggest lie. So that's kind of where I come from. And like I said, it's definitely got a biblical aspect to this, but I wasn't really raised religious. So like, I don't have the expertise to talk about that, but I'm sure there's people have those memes with like the 50 Bible verses that talk about the flat earth. But we people like myself and David Weiss and Austin Whitsitt, we'll kind of focus on the lack of curvature, the lack of motion, the natural physics of water to remain flat and level, things like that. So that's really how I got into it. And it's been since 2015, and I kind of talk about the regular conspiracies as like my initial awakening, and then the flat Earth one was sort of like, it was bigger, more impactful, and more significant. You never look at the world the same again. Whether you're flying in an airplane or looking up at the stars, everything is just a little different, and it's more magnificent, I think, than before, because there's mystery out there. We really don't have it all figured out, and we're told that they do have it all figured out.
Absolutely. Yeah. What was that video you watched? The 200 truths or whatever?
200 proofs Earth is not a spinning ball.
Proofs Earth is not a spinning ball. Okay.
Yeah. Eric Dubay is one of the, he's like the Del Bigtree or the RFK of like the flat Earth, he's like the guy who kind of sort of really brought it back to the forefront, was making the really quality content and getting the word out there, writing the books.
Oh, wow. How do you spell his last name?
Dubay.
B-A-Y. Okay, yeah. I'm just looking for more resources on this, because, like, I mean, I think from what I've heard so far, it does make sense. But, like you said, it's such a big, massive lie that it's really hard to wrap your mind around it. I'm not saying I don't believe it at all. In fact, I'm probably leaning more towards it. Maybe I'm like 51% at this point, still kind of on the fence. But only because it's just such a big lie. And I think the hardest thing is, like, how could you possibly get the buy-in the amount of people needed to cover this up, how could you possibly get them all to buy in to it, I guess, is one of my questions. So maybe you can address that
That's
question.
A great question.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question. And I think that's what bothers all of us in the beginning, right? And you could even apply that to 9/11. You have people say, well, my congressman and senator, you're telling me that they know that the towers were blown up. No, it's very compartmentalized. And the same thing with NASA. I would venture to say that 98% of NASA believes we went to the moon, believes that, we're doing all the space travel we say. But like I said, it's so compartmentalized. You'll have a spacecraft that's worked on by like 180 companies. They're all building one little part, and they all send it off, and it gets built and sent somewhere. Now they can't really ever verify that. But then you've got 800 people going, my uncle built a satellite. My grandfather worked on a satellite. Well, yeah, his company was contracted by NASA to send them the fender for the rocket. But I think what you just have to remember is like hardly anyone's in on it. And I think that's the only way it works. It's kind of like I go talk to pilots, or I go talk to engineers or surveyors, and they'll look at you with that deer in headlights look like, I've never thought about that before. And then you go, oh, okay, you guys are off the hook. You guys aren't lying. You guys aren't in on it. And pilots are a great one, because airplanes are one of my favorite proofs. If we had an 8 inches per mile square drop, that's the curvature formula. We would have to, the airplane would have to dip the nose a little bit every now and then, fly over a ball. If it was just over a flat surface, it would just fly parallel, which it does.
Right.
But when you do the math, they would have to be dipping the nose a half a mile every minute. Now, just try to fathom a half a mile every minute. Like the plane would almost have to be constantly dipping over and over, or just on like a constant kind of glide downward. And as we all know, they fly parallel with the nose slightly tilted up, cruising altitude, aside from takeoff and landing. So you also don't have to account for runways. If the Earth is spinning west to east, how do you land on a north-south runway? As you're going to land, that runway is moving this direction. So but some people will say the airplane and the atmosphere is all moving with it. But this is what I guess we always get to, is you start to break open those questions and say, okay, well, is the atmosphere moving with it? And then you go look up the official story and think about hot air balloons and sniper bullets, get it all drilled down. They don't have their story straight. It's a complete mess, and none of it makes any sense. Then they really use gravity to fill in all their little anomaly holes.
Wow. Yeah. No, that actually does make a lot more sense than what we hear. I mean, I never knew that you would have to fly at that type of decline, basically, with the nose down every half mile or whatever. That's wow. That's shocking. That's a shocking revelation.
Well, the reason that the reason you probably think that is very common, and I did too, is what were we always taught? The Earth's so big, so vast, we could never see it, never see the curve. Right. I think that was what was ingrained in us. So then when you go research flat Earth and you go, well, what's the equation? What is the drop? It is a ball, so there has to be a drop at some point. And then when you figure out what it is, you're like, what? This is ridiculous. None of this. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson keeps moving the globe post, as we call it. They tell you where you can see curvature, and they've moved it to like 63 miles high now. So everybody who thinks they saw it from Mount Everest or skydiving or from an airplane or their grandfather on the flight of the Concorde, mainstream science has now moved it up to 63 miles. And they say that even those edge of space flights, you can't see it. He says they're using a wide angle lens that curves horizontal lines. So right. It's just very deceiving when you've got NASA and Red Bull sending people up there, and then when they get back down, they're like, yeah, the curvature looks so amazing. And then you go do the math and you go look at the real footage, and it's like, no, they just, it was either confirmation bias or they're making it up. It's really strange.
Right. That is so crazy. So just to the audience, if you have a question for Justin about flat Earth, because I think we all have tons of questions, unless you're just, already a true believer and you already know all these things, just put comments in that, like, what doesn't make sense to you about flat Earth that you would like me to ask Justin about. So, one question that I have, well, actually, I posted Matt's interview on X or just the episode itself. And one thing somebody said was, oh, well, according to the flat earthers, the ice shelf would have to be bathed in sunlight, most of the time. So how could the ice shelf even exist? Have you gotten that question before or thought about that issue?
Had the sun, well, say that again. The sun would be bathing the ice shelf.
So, well, let me
Bathing its sun,
ask
you
this.
said?
Let me ask this one first, because like this is one that I personally don't
Okay.
understand, and then I think it's the broader question that would address that particular X user's comment. So, how does and this is just because I don't really have a good concept of like what the flat Earth model would look like. Like Matt, when he came on, he showed me what the flat Earth map would look like, but I don't have a good concept of like how the sun and the moon would relate to the flat Earth map. So how do sunsets work? Like how do the sun and moon revolve, or what? How do they move in the flat Earth model? Can you just explain all of that?
So yeah, so I think one of the biggest things you have to kind of unravel is like the official story of the entire solar system, because we want to throw like that flat pancake disk Earth that we see in the cartoon images and just throw it in the solar system, and then you're like, why are the other planets flat? How does the sun work? You basically have to throw the whole model out and start from scratch. Don't take this literal, like I think this is what it is. I'm just going to try to help everyone understand what it would look like. But imagine like a snow globe or like the Truman Show, and we're just the flat floor, and then there's like a glass dome above it. And in that dome is the sun, the moon, and the stars. And just like when you're a baby and you're laying in your crib and that mobile is moving above you and the planet's moving in a circular motion, that's exactly what the sun, moon, and stars are doing. The sun tells you the hour, the moon tells you the day, the stars tell you the month. We have a perfectly made sky clock, an intelligent design. Go figure, right? This totally counters this idea of it being a cosmic sneeze, a godless Big Bang accident, and everything from nothing exploded into this magnificent creation with a perfect sky clock. It's just preposterous to think it's not intelligently designed, right? So you have all of that's essentially. Now you also have to take the sun from 93 million miles away in the official story and bring it all the way down to Earth and make it much smaller. So the sun and moon appear the same size when you look up at them in the sky. What are the chances, right? They are. That's what we believe. They're about the same size. They're about the same distance away. They're within our firmament. They're within our dome world, if you will. So the sun is acting more of a spotlight, and it's only illuminating over top of the area it's directly at. So I know sunsets are almost like the last thing that I was able to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I still can't.
I know. So we all think the sun's going down, right? We have sunrise and sunset. All right. I guess first example is think of a street light on a long highway. Each street light looks like it gets lower and lower and lower, right? You know the street lights are all the same height. They're not setting over the curvature. They're just getting lower due to perspective until they converge with the vanishing point. That's the same thing the sun is doing. So the sun is essentially moving further and further away from you, but due to perspective, it looks like it's going down, and it will almost go down at an angle. You can sort of replicate this over a desert in a cool, dry area. You can watch the sun disappear into this tiny little dot because it's getting further away. It's not going down. Now, most people will come back and say, well, I watch the sun set all the time over the water and it gets real big. It actually gets bigger than it does during the sky. And that's true, right? You say, how do you explain that, flat earthers?
Right.
Well, it's a complicated explanation, but in short, there are so many water droplets in our atmosphere, and especially close to the ground, that it's acting as a magnifier. So you're almost dealing with atmospheric magnification, making the sun and moon look really big sometimes on the horizon as it sets. We know it's not getting that much closer in a couple hours.
Right.
So it's almost like an optical illusion. And the think about an airplane. When you watch an airplane go over you, it looks like it's going down always, right? It almost looks like it's flying at an angle. It's not. You know, it's at 35,000 feet and it's flying perfectly straight. But because of our perspective, when it's right over you, just like 12 o'clock noon sun, it's directly above you. But as it gets further away, it will appear to go downward. There's the only way to really wrap your head around the sun is with videos. I try to tell people without the visuals, it's a really tough one because we've just got the old model ingrained so much in our head.
Right. Yeah. I think that, I mean, for me, it's like, that is the main thing that, like I've said, I can't wrap my mind around, because you would think like, you know, and I've just like the people you were describing, it's like, you know, when I'm thinking about, okay, how could the earth possibly be flat? I'm not saying I don't believe it at all, because, you know, I definitely believe in a lot of these, you know, just we've been lied to, but so I'll like watch the sun and you know, it was obviously with sunglasses on, so I don't go blind.
Right.
But it's like, you know, and I'll watch it go down. And I'm like, well, wouldn't that? Because it does seem like it's going down over, you know, disappearing into the curvature. But then, of course, you know, you talk about how it doesn't make sense that the Earth's curvature would be what they tell us it is, at least.
Right.
You know, because of the airplane thing, because you can see objects that you shouldn't be able to see, you know, if the Earth's curvature is what they told us. And what's kind of funny, when you were talking, I actually had a vivid memory of when I was a child. I was probably maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I remember looking at a giant ball and trying to wrap my head around the globe Earth, because I was like, I was thinking,
Yes.
I was like, okay, why do you never notice? I mean, just as a young child, I was like, you would think that if
Yes.
we were on a ball, you would notice some kind of curvature in some way. And then I was like thinking of like, okay, what if I put an ant on this ball, or just like a pinprick? You know, I guess it would look flat to the ant, but that still doesn't make sense,
Right.
because you would think that there would be some kind of curvature somewhere, and you just don't ever see it anywhere in your life. I mean, that's what I thought as a young
Right.
child.
They tell us it's so big we
Right.
can't see it.
Right.
And they tell us it's spinning so fast we can't feel it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can't detect the curvature or the motion, but believe us, it's there. Trust the scientists, right?
Yep.
I try to tell people they got us so early with this one, because what you
Mhm.
just described was your natural questioning. When we're a kid, we go, well, how come the people in Australia don't fall off? How come the
Exactly.
water doesn't fall off?
Yep.
And they'll go, oh, well, gravity. And they start explaining these things, and you go, all right, well, you're the authority. You know, your subconscious childhood mind is believing authority. And as a kid, first thing you walk into school and see in that room is a globe. So from very early on, and my son is 4 now, and I've noticed so much, like in all the cartoons and everything, there's so much space and rockets and globes and dinosaurs, and all this comes in the same basket. This is
Mhm.
this big lie of evolution, of the Big Bang, of the heliocentric model. And the sun also is an interesting one, because when you see the video, you can basically let the sun go over the curvature, right? Just a little bit. So it starts to disappear from the bottom up. If you take a camera and zoom in all the way, the sun will start to resolve above that horizon, proving that basically what's happening is your perspective is running out, and soon
Mm.
the sun won't be visible.
Mm.
But if a camera can pull it back into view, you're not pulling it over the curvature. And this is
Right.
one of the biggest proofs with the boats, because what's the age old proof? We watch the boat go out to sea and we can't see it anymore. The Earth's a ball. I mean, this is Pythagoras and Eratosthenes' days.
Right.
Well, our optics outgrew their lies. And you can
Mm.
take a Nikon P900, let that boat go completely eclipsed over the curvature or horizon,
Mm.
and then zoom in, and it will pull the whole boat back into view.
Wow.
That right there disproves that, and again, it's kind of like, all right, well, I don't want to say that this proves flat earth, but I just disproved the curvature formula. I just disproved the age old myth that boats over the horizon prove we live on a ball. So if
Mm.
you're like checking all these off and you're like, where is the evidence of the ball? All I can see for as far as I can go in any direction on an airplane or in a high altitude balloon launch, it's perfectly flat. I'm not, doesn't mean flat earth. Maybe it's a million times bigger than they told us,
Right.
but they're lying about where we live. And I think they're hiding our true history, hidden continents, free energy technology. It's so much bigger than the shape. And I'm glad I just stumbled on that, because I want to say that before I forget, is it's not about the shapes. Everyone going, dude, I got to go to work tomorrow. Why are we talking about the shape of the earth? I don't care if
Right.
it's a trapezoid. It is not about that. It's about being deceived 8 ways to Sunday and spinning you around and putting you as a monkey on a ball in space, going nowhere fast, when really you are intelligently designed for a purpose. And we could be the center of this perfectly designed timepiece. And that's
Mhm.
very significant. People want to
Right.
know if their spouse is cheating on them. I think people deserve to know about the forces around us, our home, where we are, where we came from, our relationship with the creator. I mean, this is the type of things they're hiding with this lie. And that's why it's so important.
Absolutely. Because yeah, and when Matt was on my show, I could be wrong, I could be misremembering it, but I'm pretty sure he said that that was actually one of the ways, the main way he came to faith in Christ was realizing that the earth was flat, because you know it pretty much, you would have to believe in intelligent design and in God
Mm-hmm.
if the earth was really flat, because then that makes the earth unique to all other bodies in
Yep.
the universe. and would make the Earth, because it's like if the Earth's just another globe floating around in space like every other planet, there's really nothing special about it. And so what makes, so then it kind of lends credence to the idea that, oh, well, humans just made up God to make themselves feel better about the world, and there's really nothing special about the Earth, and there could be a million other civilizations out there and other gods, and they probably have their own theory about God, so it really, but if the Earth is truly flat, then it's like, well, there's something very special about the Earth, and maybe the Bible is true. It's pretty compelling evidence, I would say.
Exactly.
You think would you say that's the main reason that this lie was perpetrated in your view?
I'd say there's probably about a dozen reasons. I wouldn't even know how to rank them, but I do think separating us from the Creator and his creation is one of them. Hiding the other continents. I always liken it to everyone who's seen the Truman Show. Right. Remember when Truman starts to figure out what's going on? He becomes a pain in the butt. Like, he keeps trying to escape and go to Fiji, and they have to stop him. Imagine if 8 billion Trumans figured out that you could go beyond the Antarctic ice wall and there were other continents, and maybe other civilizations and other beings, and some of these legends that we've heard about and these extinct animals. Who knows what's out there, right? That would be a big problem. So they created a prison planet. They basically took the flat map and they wrapped it around onto a ball, and they made the perimeter, Antarctica, just a little icy continent on the bottom. And that's why there's the Antarctic Treaty, and nobody's allowed to go there independently.
Right.
And before the naysayers come in and say, you can take a cruise there and government goes there.
I've heard that.
But it's very controlled, very specialized. You cannot go independently.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Wow. So what other so it sounds like what you're saying is, so because when I first started to wrap my mind around this, my first main objection other than just the visual of the sun was, well, why would they do this? Who would go? What person in the right mind or group of people would possibly want to go to these lengths to convince everybody that the world is round? And when I started listening to a podcast, like the first podcast I ever listened to about flat Earth, which I think is just called the Flat Earth Files, I found it on Spotify. That's pretty good. I finally realized, like, oh, to discredit God, that's one of the main objections. So, but you're also saying it's to hide what is beyond Antarctica, because there's all these other things that are would be extremely beneficial to mankind, that they want to hide from us. Are there any other? What are some of the other reasons? I'm curious.
I wish I had that little graphic in front of me, but it's got the list of all of them. But it's like, take your pick, and it's like, to hide the Creator, to hide free energy, to hide what's beyond Antarctica. Those are probably the main reasons. To hide our true history. I think that's what it's about. I'm sure you've probably heard about the Tartarian Empire.
I haven't actually. I've never heard of that. Surprising. What is that?
So my friend Sean Hibbler of Hibbler Productions, who makes some of the best flat Earth films, is coming out with a movie about the old world. And it's called Old World Order. And it's going to be about the Tartarian Empire and these massive. So think about the massive structures that are built across the world, from the pyramids to these big buildings that we can't replicate today with technology and with machinery. But they tell us that these people built it with a horse and buggy. It's just ridiculous. So there was definitely some sort of reset, we think, that happened, where we were much more advanced and they just reset everything. I don't know if everyone got wiped out with a mud flood. That's some of the popular theories. But aside from that, I don't want to digress into that too much. But I think it's to hide our true history about like what really was going on. I've read a book that theorizes that the giants came over and helped us fight off these other civilization that is in control of this realm and has been for eons and all this stuff. I'm like, what if this is our true history? There's so many things out there.
Wow.
And I'm sure you've heard of the allegory of the cave. If you raise a child in like a basement, and one day you're like, hey, I think there's something outside that door up there. And they're like, no. Everything's great down here. Like, I got food, AC, like video games. Like, what do you mean? There's nothing else out there. That's dangerous. You're a conspiracy theorist. And it's like, to everyone that would want to fight this, is like, there could potentially be, the answer to scarcity. And cancer, or whatever these things that they've plagued us with, and war. They always tell us that we're going to run out of oil and run out of water and run out of land. Absolutely. That's why they push the depopulation. What if there's 75 more continents? All that goes out the window. And I don't personally believe that we ever run out of oil or water. Me neither. I think the earth is replenishing it repeatedly. And I think that the elite have found a way to use scarcity to basically control us, and what is a better way to control someone is to tell them they're running out of all their resources, and to make them ignorant to the world around them. I mean, you're easier to control that way. If you don't know how things work, if you don't even know what gravity is and it's something else, could be electrostatic, then we don't even know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that, I mean, just listening to you, I can see how, I can feel how people, I don't know, just as somebody who is interested and curious in all of these things, it's hard for me to imagine how certain people just like, they don't even want to hear about it. They just want to live kind of in the
Yeah.
reality. But now, like, just listening to you talk, I'm like, I'm kind of experiencing some of that anxiety because I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what, now I've realized so much of how the world is very different than what I thought it to be. Just recently, like I was talking about this with Matt, like when I really dug into the roots of Zionism, and we can get into that next, and realized so much of what I believed my whole life was just a total and complete lie. I mean, I was like that scene where Neo in the Matrix realizes that he's living in this virtual world that the machines have created for him,
Yeah.
this, construct, this simulation. His reaction is no, that can't possibly be true. And he pukes, and he just freaks out. And it's like, I almost had that experience, not to that level, but just realizing, oh my gosh, I have believed something, just took it for granted my whole life that it's absolutely not true.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, the worst part was, oh my gosh, like 80% of American Christians or more just take it for granted, believe this, and it's a total lie.
Yeah.
So it's like listening to you talk now, I'm just like, wow, like, I mean, the history of the world could be radically different than I believe it to be. I mean, that's a possibility. I mean, do you think that's why
There's some
most people
people
don't
that
get
think,
into this?
yeah, well, and just real quick, there's some people that think there's 1,000 years knocked off our number. It's only like 1,021 or 24. I mean, there's some interesting theories. That there's also people who think that the Earth's population is way less than what they say it is.
Huh.
They've heightened that number up to make us again be like, oh my
Really?
gosh, we got to do something about, running out of too many people and running out of space. But what was your question? Oh, why people are so resistant? I think.
Mm,
I think it's just like any of the other topics. Is you don't want to admit you've been fooled. It's
right.
much easier to fool someone than to convince them they've been fooled. We all know that quote. And I think it's because the lie is so big.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to be like, okay, some scientists, fudge some science on fluoride and it's bad for us.
Right.
And we found out, now we take it out of the water. But like the sky is blue is like the earth is a globe. I mean, it's a given in your mind. I flew for 25 years. And I remember never, ever looking out the window thinking about that. And then the day I researched flat earth, I've looked out the window so much flying and I'm just like, how did I never once think, can I see curvature? Like, where should I see it? I guess I always just went to the back of my mind that it must just be too big for me to see. But it's just a very, very hard thing to let go. Also, if you are a space nerd, if you love Star Wars and Star Trek, it's going to be tough. Like that stuff is like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like taking a kid's ball away and they just don't want to have it.
Yeah.